Hey, who's the person in your life that you see as the angry person? When you look around you, do you see anyone up close and personal that it's like that person's angry all the time? Do you look in the mirror and see yourself maybe that you might be the person that's just constantly angry? I have people tell me all the time, I have a bad temper. The temper that I have, I can't control, things like that. Well, we talked about in the last sessions about temperament, and that's where they get the word temper from. And so the temperament of a person comes from the adding of information. Remember, this is core programs, and core program stands for Center of Our Relationship Experiences. And so what we look at is who related to us in what ways, what was role model to us when we were kids, when we were young, and that is the temperament. And I gave the example of like a can of paint. You take white paint and you give it to Menards or whoever, and you want it to be pink or blue or some other color. They add all kinds of colors to it that you would think it's not going to come out the color I wanted, but it comes out the color you wanted. That what they're doing is they're tempering the paint. And so your assignment was in these last couple sessions to figure out what was the temperament of the people around you and how did they temper you? If you're that can of paint, what did they do to temper you? Did they show you extreme things like yelling and, punching a hole in the wall and all this kind of stuff, cussing at you? These are more extreme things. Those are not adult behaviors, even though adults do it all the time. It's a childlike way. Like almost like throwing a fit. It would make more sense if a 3-year-old did that or a 6-year-old did that. But it doesn't make sense when you're 45 and you punch a hole in the wall. It says that your temperament has been tempered to a color that now you have to figure out how to change that. And most people don't go into this like, I got to change that temper problem. That's what I got to do. They go into it saying, I have to figure out how to control the temper. Because what are we told when we're kids? If we throw a fit or something, control your temper. So you're going to grab a hold of your temperament and you're just going to control it. You're not going to fix it. You're not going to get to the root of it. You're not going to temper it differently. Just control it. Well, on a good day, you're pretty good at that. But on a day where you're overtired, all those different things, your temperament shows up. It's part of your character, and it is there that, it's going to manifest how you're feeling. And then we feel like we failed, right? Now, Colossians 3:8 says, but now you must put them all away. Anger, wrath, malice, slander, and obscene talk from your mouth. So the Bible, our Lord wants us to put this away. And really, that's another way of saying, could you be done with that? And yet the Bible says, go ahead and be angry, but sin not in your anger. So he's not saying the part where you feel the emotion. He's saying the part where you're acting out the emotion and how you do that. It's not that you're trying to control it. It's how to motivate it. You know how to keep it at a certain level. You know how to have restraint. You know just how to do that. And then it doesn't take much control to handle that. So we have to understand ourselves. Who's the angriest person around us? Well, they might have tempered you. But also now, if we look in the mirror, what's our temperament? So we were supposed to identify that. And if this is the first podcast you're watching, go ahead and do that. Just take a piece of paper and write down, what was it like at my church, at my daycare, at whatever you participated in as you were growing up? The main one is, what was it like where I was being raised? And what were the authority figures role modeling to you? And we pick up so much of that, and how we felt about that gives us temperament. And so I have found over the years, including myself, I shared a little bit on the other podcast where I kind of was a child of rage because rage is that number past 10. And we talked a little bit about that, how you can go from 1 to 10 with your anger. And it starts out just being like, well, that's not right. And that's a 1. Well, that's not right. And then the red flag comes up inside of you and says, I might need a boundary for this. But if you weren't trained what boundaries you should have, it'll go 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you'll all of a sudden be up there and you're like, I'm really ticked off. And you don't even know how you got there because there was no ladder you walked up, and therefore you don't know how to get down. If you know how you walked up something, then you can reverse that and get down and come more to a level playing field. So there are people, I used to be this way myself, where it was 1 to 10 and you didn't know how you got there. Well, 10 is the highest number represented in my classes and what I teach. You cross 10, now you're not angry, you're enraged. And anger says, I want something to stop. Stop it. It's like that's what's coming up. The flag that comes up and says, no, I need a boundary for this. Well, sometimes we get more angry because we feel like we don't have a boundary, or the boundary we did try to draw, nobody's listening to, and no one is honoring you when you have that boundary for yourself. And so it's insulting. And all of those things just within seconds will pop you from a 5 to a 10. You cross over a 10, rage says, I want something to stop, but I actually don't believe it ever will. I don't believe it's going to stop. And so now I really don't care what happens to you. And I don't care what happens to me. Anything goes. And so it's a dangerous spot to be at rage. People don't go to jail for things just because they were like, hey, that's not right. Or I'm slightly annoyed. Or, that's annoying. And it's starting to get irritating. All those lowercase words, if we say it like that, we're far from being in rage. But if we let ourselves get to 1 to 10, we'll for sure go in rage eventually. And then when we lose it, we come down off of that adrenaline. We come down off of that way of feeling. And let me tell you, it's embarrassing. You feel like you don't want to even hang out with yourself. You're like, how did I lose it? What is wrong with me? I can't even believe I said that to that person. Or we'll harden our heart and justify what we did. No, they had it coming, and that's why I told them what I did, and that's why I pushed them, and that's why I did this. And then we'll justify those behaviors when there's really no reason to do that. It's wrong. I acted like a child, and even if what I was angry about, what I wanted to stop, really should have stopped, I just acted like a child to try to get it there, which then invokes in the other person childlike behaviors. Most people are not trained how to respond to you as an adult. They will respond at the level you're talking. They'll meet you right where they're at because, hey, they haven't taken as anger resolution class and they didn't know this information. And so, if you're smacking off, all of a sudden they're going to be smacking off. If you get physical, they're like, well, bring it, and it's that kind of feeling that goes with it. We have to look at that and know that the Lord told us put these things away. We don't need to, the word pictures here in slander and malice is to go to the place of the flesh. We don't need to rely on our flesh to settle an argument. We don't need to rely on our strength and our body and our size to settle an argument. We don't need to realize or to come into a place where, I'm going to slander you. There's going to be malice. I'll use obscene talk and stuff's going to come out my mouth. I will cut you and then you will have to listen to me. Have you ever found that people don't go, well, thank you for doing that. Now I can hear what you're saying. Nobody does that. Everyone retaliates and they come to the same level you're at. You set the tone and now they're just following it. And so here we are, but now you must put them all away: anger, wrath, malice, slander, and obscene talk from your mouth. These are the things when we're putting them away. It doesn't say deny the emotion of anger. It's to take the things that would bring harm to another person and put that away. Don't even have that as an option. It's like having an argument with somebody and there just happens to be a knife on the counter. Eventually, the higher that argument goes, the knife becomes an option. It shouldn't be out. You should have put that away. That's kind of what Colossians 3:8 is talking about. We know that Proverbs says 15:1, and Proverbs is the wisdom chapters of the Bible. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. So all we have to do is touch someone else's button by hurting them, by saying something harsh, by bringing out that thing where they're wounded. I mean, you poke somebody where they're bruised or where there's an open wound, you're going to get a reaction. I'm sorry, you could hug somebody when they got sunburned. You're going to get a reaction because they're in pain in that area. So many times people who are, trained to fight and win arguments, and that's their whole goal, they'll find your area of pain and just poke the crud out of that. That's what they'll do. And here it'll bring up this wrath in certain people. And people who are invoking this are in pain also. So a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. A soft answer does not mean a lay down and let everybody walk on me answer. We have to realize that. That is the fear of putting our anger tools away. Not the emotion of anger, but that's the fear most people have about, like, I'm just going to put all my tools away, all my weaponry away, everything I've ever used. I'm not going to do that anymore. And then someone's just poking your pain or in your space, accusing you of something or just being full of malice, full of, slandering words and all that kind of stuff. Well, I already put these things away, so they're not an option. And that can make you afraid. Then it's like, well, I guess the other ditch I'm in is I'm just going to lay down, let people run over me. I'm just going to let them walk over me. And then if you want to add a little religion to it, and I'm not talking about the gospel because that's different than religion. Religion's man-made. When you add a little religion, sprinkle it up with that, then there's a word that goes behind it that will be like, well, you need to do as Jesus did. And he died on the cross for us. Well, what we did now is we drew a picture of Jesus laying down for everything. He just put up with everything. No, he had authority and he walked in it. When it came to dying on the cross, he chose to. He chose to obey the Father. It wasn't the people. It was the Father he was obeying. It wasn't, Pilate that he had to obey. It was the Father. And he chose to lay down his life, which was the most powerful thing to do. And we'll see that as just, that's love. Just lay there and let people run over me. God has boundaries. You need to read the Bible sometime. That's the part of the Bible that people get angry about. He has boundaries for himself and for his people against sin. When he says to not do different things, it's not just he's bossing you around. He's like, I'm trying to protect my family. I'm here protecting my family. So there should not be this going on, right? The same way if you mess with my grandkids or my kids or whatever, woof, you're going to find me have boundaries. And it's because of the love that I have for my family. So, or my friends or whatever is going on. And I'm going to want to bring righteousness to that situation. A-sapperoni. All right. These are professional words I use many times. So Ephesians 4:26 says, be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. Later on in this series, we are going to be talking about how to go to bed at night when you're just peeved. It's something we have to deal with. Now, it's funny to me now, but it sure wasn't funny to me when I would go to bed at night just peeved. There is a way that you can release that other person. You can tell yourself, we are going to deal with this. I don't have to deal with this right now. I forgive all parties. I want my heart clean, Lord God, and I'm going to bed. But if we feel like a victim, we'll be up half the night. We got to figure out a way. And have you ever noticed when you figure that out, it's always like, if they say that, then I'm going to say this. And then if he postures himself like this is what I'm going to do. And I'll tell him, I'll tell that person, and we have all these big plans and we lay there lose sleep all night and you make these big plans and the thing that you're planning for never happens. And you're almost mad about that because you didn't get a chance to draw the boundaries. But you're also mad that you're in the situation that you couldn't think of a boundary at the time. I freed myself in different ways with people who were mad on the phone. It took me a bit to do this. This was years and years ago. So someone's calling and they're like, I gotta tell you, this is what's happening. And they start chewing me out. And I'm like, I can hear that you're angry. Can we talk about what you're angry about? Well, you never listen and da, 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 da. I'm sorry. I think you're not in the right place right now to continue this conversation. See, I took authority so that I didn't have to sit there and be abused. I'm just assessing the situation for me. Now, they can think they're in the best spot ever, but nope, from my side of it, I see that you're in this spot. And I really want to talk this through with you, but I'm going to give you some time to think about this and we'll reconnect. Goodbye. Goodbye. It was such a good, like, "Arr." So sometimes people just like, I'm blocking that person. Well, that can be a boundary that's healthy if someone's just like, I don't know, interrogating you all the time or just after you or terrorizing you. Block them. If they don't know your boundaries and they don't adhere to that, eventually you have to say, you know what, I'm going to block you. Block. And that's okay. But avoiding telling them where you're at and just pressing the button to hang up is not a good boundary. It's just not a good boundary. You give them where you're at, like the example I gave you. Like, I'm not in a space where I want to hear you yelling at me. There's so many different ways to say it. But a lot of times we don't have that verbal judo. So I'm giving you a couple ideas here. It sounds like you're really angry, or I'm not in the space where I want to hear you continuing to yell at me. So when you're done with your anger, when you're done working that through, you can call me then. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it. And they might be screaming at you in the background, at the same time you're talking, but you got your boundary out. You knew that you were level when you did it. You put away all those other tools. Because if your toolbox is right there, you know what? You start go gangster. It's like, you say that, I'm going to say this. And then all of a sudden your language starts to change. Your body posture starts to change. And you're ready to roll over the phone, let alone if you get that person in person. And so then you carry that argument with you wherever you go. Where what it did for me when someone does that is I release myself from carrying that. I don't need to carry that all day. It's not on me to get my temper under control. I'm giving them space to get their temper under control. I get to go on with my day. Now, I'm not shunning them. I'm not cutting them out. I'm not doing any of that. I will need to answer to, if it's the right setting, the call and work them through whatever it is. I'm more than happy to talk about that. If I had a poor behavior or something that ticked you off, hey, I can own that, so I'm real relaxed about it. And that was so relieving. I used to carry such a stress that they said this to me on the phone. And then I'd watch, the phones back then didn't tell you who was calling. You just, it was like rolling the dice. You picked up the phone and you're like, I don't know who I'm going to get. And so that's a lot scarier. Where you can look on your phone now and say, am I ready to talk to that person? And you can't just keep postponing it, but you find that space where you either call them and ask them if they're ready to talk, or they're talking to you when they call or whatever, and you've determined I'm in a good space. Sounds like they're in a good space. And we can go there. We can have that conversation, and the conversations almost end up just totally different. Because if a person's tempered where they go to 1 to 7, I'm not coming up to 7 with you. You're inviting me to come up to 7. Sorry, I'm at a 1 at best. And the goal is to stay there. Now, if I know I've got my toolbox next to me with all my weaponry, with all my cuss words and my fleshly things that I can throw at you, well, hey, then, I got opportunity to gangster up against you. And I've seen people that, body language changes and they start, because they're really going to get this out and they're really going to, tell that other person, and it heals nothing. So this is why it's so important that we put away those tools. They can't be an option in our life. And man, do we want those tools sometimes. Our flesh, it's so funny. Our flesh, I know this about myself. It's not funny until you conquer it, but it is funny looking back. I said some of the dumbest stuff because you're trying to get the last word in. You're trying to pull the biggest lever, the threat, the whatever, and like, then I don't love you anymore, like little kids do. Like, Mom, I hate you. Well, you just fed them breakfast and they told you They loved you an hour before, but now they hate you completely. And it's irrational. It's irrational behavior. Adults do irrational behavior. The childlike part of us wants to repeat that. So, this is why it's important to really dig inwardly and say, who uh, who tempered me? Because when you're a child, you can't say, stop tempering me. I don't need that. I'm going to have boundaries. You're just there. Children end up being in conversations, where two people are arguing and they're standing right there and everyone's okay with that. They shouldn't be in those settings. The first thing you should do is say, we need to bring this down. And if we've got stuff to talk about that we got to talk about personally, we can't do that in front of my child. It teaches the child to have boundaries too, that says what's appropriate. But a lot of people will say they don't understand. They're just a kid. Oh, your subconscious it will record everything. So later on, when they get to the place of understanding something, that's the file they'll pull and role model that information. We don't want that. We don't want to have that. So we got to put those tools away. Ooh. So how do you do that? I mean, I had to just say, these are not an option. So I slowed everything down when I'd talk to somebody or someone's chewing me out on the phone, because anger speeds things up. The other thing anger does is it fixates you on the problem. You can't see anyone else. That's why they don't notice there's a child there when they're cussing like crazy. That's why they don't care who else sees this. That's why, whatever. They're just focused on you because they're mad. And so then it's really difficult. If we have all these options, we're going to bring them into that, because adrenaline makes you fixate. It makes you come into a spot where you're just fixated on the problem. Other people can be like, hey, stop it, or whatever. You can't even hear them. It's like it's so fixated out, and you're just staring at that thing that you're really ticked off about, and you want it to stop now. You don't understand it. Maybe you don't have all the information around it, but you're going to make something stop right now. And you kind of feel like that's going to relieve you. But it never ends up that way, and people get more wounded and more hurt. And the more hurt you are, the more you hold on to those tools, bring them close to you, start wearing them on your body, so that anytime if you need to pull out a weapon, there it is. So we know that if we identify how we're tempered, then we'll also know what are the tools I use. So we're going to get into that a little bit more in the next session, but I'll just start talking about it now. We know, okay, so here's how we're tempered. Do we go from 1 to 10? Do we skip numbers? These are identifying factors we've got to write down in a journal, talk to your therapist about, work through, when you're thinking about things and you're working at your workplace and you just are rolling something through your mind. It's more of like, do I really go from 1 to 5 that quick? I didn't think I did. I thought I gradually moved up and went to 1 to 5. I had no idea. I just went there. It scared everybody in the house. Or I went from 1 to 10 and I could feel myself shaking and out of control. I can't even believe I went into that rage area. You have to be able to say, here's how I was tempered. This is the information I got. And here is the levels I go to and the levels I jump most of the time. And then now we're in that other stage of identifying what tools we normally use. It is not fun, but you can't get resolved in anger by me saying forgive and forget, white knuckle through this, hold on and really control your anger. You're out of control already. When you're past 5, you're not controlling it. You lost control going from 1 to 5 itself. And then when you go from 5 to 10, you are out of control. You can be really angry, but when you grab for those tools and you have them, ready and in the chute, they become your protection. Well, how harsh you can be with your mouth becomes your protection. How pushy you can be, how threatening. And here's what's interesting. I was tempered like this because I saw this as I was growing up. If I knew I was winning a fight, the other person was scared. So I have to say whatever I can do to scare them, knock them over, do whatever to scare them. Because otherwise, how can I identify if I have full control? Anger wants something to stop, but one of the tools it's used is I am in full control. I will show you that I'm more powerful in my speech and my psyche and all these different areas. I'm in control. So here we have to start identifying what are the weapons that you use for that control. So you're writing down these 3 items, the temperament and who tempered you, right? And then where are you at on the chart going from 1 to 10? And then the third one is, what are your tools of warfare? What are your tools of warfare? We're going to get into that in the next session.